Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I'm excited to be here today to introduce our SGS webinar, Top 100 Automotive Companies, the ESG Reporting Trends. Today's webinar will cover a short overview of SGS, the top 100 automotive companies, reporting and common frameworks, governance bodies and a board-level example, environmental topics and targets, third-party assurance and levels, an overview of the automotive leadership practices, and Q&A at the end. Please feel free to enter your questions in the Q&A box throughout the presentation. We will also be sending out an email with the link to the on-demand version of the presentation, along with a copy of the slide deck later today. You can also find the presentation on our YouTube channel within about 2 weeks. My name is Kim LaFrancois, and I am the ESG and Sustainability Business Development Manager for North America here at SGS. I've been in the testing, inspection, and certification industry for 10 years, working with many different clients throughout various industries. The other speakers joining us today are Adam Hammis and Harsh Vasoya. Adam is the ESG Director at SGS and has 20 years experience as corporate ESG sustainability consultant, author, and instructor. Adam has founded multiple organizations and has an MBA with international education and leadership experience, integrating ESG, CSR, and sustainability into corporate strategy. He has also taken many different courses to become a competent and effective resource for ESG and sustainability. Harsh has 9 years of international experience providing climate change and sustainability solutions in many different industries. He has been conducting assurance and advisory projects across multiple frameworks and standards, and has multiple ESG thought leadership publications in the field. We're in great hands today with Adam and Harsh. I'll now pass it over to Adam so we can dive right in.
Thank you, Kim, and thanks to everybody for joining us today. If you don't know who SGS is, we are the world's leading testing, inspection, and certification company. We've been around for a very long time. And you can always find more information about us. Sustainability is and has been embedded in the company for a very long time, from the board level CEO down to the line employees. We're actively living it as a core principle, and we have 25 plus years of experience to back it up. We sit on and are a part of the working groups that build and test most of the new standards that come out, and we become accredited providers for audits and verification and assurance, and we get recognized for our participation and our performance by the same groups and rating agencies that all of our clients do, and we tend to have more of them. We're very consistently being ranked highly, and we're very proud of it. I'm going to hand this over to Harsh, and Harsh, we're lucky to have him. He conducted the majority of the research and has the in-depth understanding of all the data points. So we're going to kind of bounce back and forth, but I'll let him set up for you what we undertook as a research project.
Sure. Thank you, Adam, and welcome everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar. Today we are specifically focusing into top 100 automotive companies, which is part of our ESG reporting trend series. We are selecting sector by sector and deriving what are the thought leadership on basis of the reporting trends, various standards and frameworks that companies are reporting on, and what are the different areas that companies are focusing upon as topics, as KPIs, as targets. And in today's webinar, we'll be looking at deep diving into what are the different trends on various sections as we have discussed in agenda. And the top 100 companies that we'll be looking at are this. One of the note that I would like to present in this top 100 companies is these are the companies who are doing business in Canada and US when we are specifically talking about North America by revenue. And the source of this information is through Zoom Info on a particular date when we have extracted the information and researched on all the different reporting trends. And what we are looking at is the latest report released by the organization or the latest information available on their website. So while we are looking at this specific report from this organizations, we'll be looking at different data trends and points in the coming slides. Over to you, Adam, on the
All right, thank you.
poll.
So we want to take a poll. We're going to talk about behaviors of actual client or actual companies and their reporting, but all of that is only insightful if you think about what is your company, what position you're in, as the maturity, you might say, of your own ESG or sustainability program. So one of the first things that we ask clients is, have you published or are you going to publish an annual ESG or sustainability report? Yes, no, or I don't know. Those are all effective answers. I'll give you a moment to look at it. If, SGS, I would hit yes, because we've been publishing a sustainability report for quite some time and recently became the first company to, in our industry, in the TIC industry, testing, inspection, and certification, to produce an integrated report, which is one of the main methodologies and frameworks for publishing your environmental, social, and governance material topics and KPIs with your financials side by side, and making sure that all the material information is cohesive. So I'll give you a few more moments as people put that in, but it does suggest a milestone that the first time that you publish one, often it can take more than a year. It's a lot of preparation. You're putting the systems and processes in place to identify and collect data, which, as everyone knows who has gone through it, can be cumbersome. It does get easier over time, the second, third year, and it helps you, but that is a good milestone to know if you ever published one or you haven't. So I'll give you about a few more seconds, then we'll hit next. And you've got a nice balance here of everyone can see that, not half and half, but 44% yes, 44% no. And it's a good thing to say, I don't know. If you just go on Google your own company and put ESG report, or Google your company, put sustainability report, or just go to your website. If it doesn't exist or you can't find it in a search, high likelihood that it doesn't exist yet, but you can talk to us and we can help you find that out. So what does that mean? When we say ESG and sustainability today, I want to tell you that we're using it in a particular way. When you go out in the world, people will use and misuse terms, and it's good to have a shared understanding. So what we're talking about today, we're going to be more talking about ESG specifically, because, and we'll tell you why, but ESG in its purest sense is just environmental, social, and governance. It's a neutral term that simply are three categories that companies, especially coming out of the public sector, publicly traded companies and investors, expect you to look at. Are there material topics financially for your company that are environmental, social, or governance in nature? And it's really about the impacts on environmental and social issues to the profitability of the company. So it's your financial bottom line. So ESG is financial materiality. When we say sustainability, we're often talking about, and today, this entire time, we're going to be talking about impact materiality, where you're adding in an additional component, which is more of the good for the world, good for the planet, good for society. What are the business's impacts on society and the environment? And that is another layer. Often together, they're considered or called double materiality. But there is a difference, and the reason why it's important to know that is that most of the standards line up pretty clearly in two camps. Integrated reporting, SASB, TCFD, they all combine. They're all investor-driven, ESG, based on financial materiality for different industries, and they combined into the Value Reporting Foundation a few years ago. They were only last year absorbed into the IFRS Foundation, International Financial Reporting Standards, which then in June published these S1 and S2 sustainability standards, S2 being specific to climate disclosures. So you could argue that S1 and S2 are the culmination of, the alignment of, and the efficient use of, put all of the best stuff in one place for financial materiality standards. Whereas sustainability and impact materiality, you're really usually leaning on GRI, who has, much like SASB, started to roll out 44 different sector-specific standards, but they do have KPIs and standards that are specific to, is it good for the planet? What's your impact on society and nature? The Sustainable Development Goals, obviously from the UN, have always been about kind of world good, but they're rolling out a tool, the SDG Impact, for investment of companies, to help companies invest in those goals around the world. There's also, I could add in another graphic, there's a new ISO standard that's being released that is a management standard for doing the SDGs and aligning your goals and reporting to it. Because one complaint about the UN SDGs is that often people just cut and paste the logo, and they don't actually have a management system in place to align with it. But there's a reason these are separate. And today we're going to look at the top of the line. We looked at framework standards. We're really focused on what's financially material, but we're going to show you if and when companies used additional GRI, impact materiality types of things. But they are two different categories of reporting. Back to you, Harsh.
Thank you, Adam. And I'll just continue where Adam left, that the trend that we observed from the reporting aspect, from the standards and framework point of view, that pretty much resonated for the sector, where many of the companies, I would say a good amount of companies, are reporting on ESG or sustainability through their report or website. And 88% were the companies who were looking at sustainability or ESG from their business operations, from financial materiality, or from the impact point of view. And out of all these companies, more than half of the companies were using specific standards or frameworks to communicate their story to the different stakeholders. And they were using multiple frameworks to communicate that story. They were using SASB, CDP, SDGs, TCFDs, which are more towards the financial materiality tools, which looks at very specific parameters to report on and to give specific information. But what we observed also, that many of the companies are towards now leaning towards frameworks like GRI, CSRD, and as well as Value Reporting Foundation through their websites, or having all these different frameworks combined into one report and having an annual report published with all the information together. So what companies are now looking at from the reporting point is trying to find that alignment in different frameworks and have one consolidated report for their stakeholders. And that was a very good resonance that we observed in the automotive sector, that all the different frameworks, may it be SASB, may it be CDP or SDGs, they are trying to align all those different reports or frameworks and standards in their report through their annual report. So all the information can reach to the stakeholders in the concise format, as well as communicating the entire story in the most comprehensive framework collaboration that they can put out. So it was a good effort from all the different companies who are into automotive and reporting over the years. And there are still very few companies who are trying to get to the level where they can have their web pages or even an environmental statement which can communicate a story. But yes, sustainability is a journey, as we always say, and it requires a step-by-step phases approach to reach that level.
You have a good question. This is, and I apologize if I get the name wrong, but Sarawi. Would you please include in the final slide deck a summary of all the acronyms used and their respective definitions? We can definitely look at that. SASB is the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board, just for the recording as well. Sustainability Accounting Standards Board, CDP is just CDP. It used to be Carbon Disclosure Project. SDG is the Sustainable Development Goals. TCFD is the Task Force for Climate-Related Financial Disclosures. GRI is the Global Reporting Initiative. CSRD is the European Union's Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. And the VRF is that Values Reporting Foundation, which was the combination of all three. Now it's going to be referred to as IFRS S1 and S2, or ISSB, again, S1 and S2. Not that clears it up, but yes, we'll look at putting an extra slide with some acronyms. Oh, next, back to me. Another question, again, we're focused on what are you doing so you can really put yourself in the maturity scale and what you want to do next. Has your organization established a senior level governance body for ESG and sustainability? Two important points there: a governance body, but at a senior level. So it's really important that you have leadership in the company that are managing environmental, social, and governance issues specifically related to environmental and social, but it needs to be at a senior level. It needs to be folks that are able to, in their role, determine whether something is material to the business or not, which is critical. Materiality is not going away. It's the driving essence of ESG and sustainability reporting. And if it's not material to the business, people are asking, why are you reporting on it? Because it takes a lot of effort, money, time, people. And so you want to report on the things that are material to the business. We put yes, because we've had for a long time. Obviously, it's a part of who we are, but we have a senior level committee that is also has oversight from our board. We're publicly traded. We're global, based out of Switzerland. So a little bit about SGS, but you might not have it yet. And you might not know. Sometimes that is reported on in the early parts of folks' sustainability reporting journey. Sometimes they pull it out, but it's a really effective communication tool. People want to know, investors, banks, they want to know if governance is taken care of and handled. So I'll give you a few more seconds. And then, yes. So yes, congratulations, 66.7. You're doing a great job. That's important. No, that's okay. You're not in bad company if you haven't got it yet. And if you don't know, again, you could look into, if you have a sustainability report, hopefully someone was involved in creating that report and it was a senior level governance body, but that's really essential, an essential component, and it's growing more and more important every day. Why is that important? We'll talk about, these are 5 major steps that we break down for the ESG or sustainability cycle. This becomes a yearly process ultimately for every company once you get on a reporting cycle. But awareness is, what are the issues, trends, and strategies affecting your geography, your region, your company. Then prioritizing from all of those different issues so you can create a strategy with vision, KPIs, goals. Then you have a group that's executing on a daily basis, daily operations, and then you tell your story in the reporting. And what companies tend to report is both the management of issues that are material as well as the performance over time. That governance body that we just discussed is really those first 3 steps. It needs to be a senior level committee because of the determination of materiality. And you can't be, I would argue, a lower or mid-level manager in a company all by yourself who determines whether these topics or issues or KPIs are material to the business or not. You need larger view from a leadership role. And then this is an automotive example from the industry of showing not only that there's good board oversight, this is from a public disclosed report, but they have multiple bodies that then break into basically like subgroups and subcommittees at the operational level that are all reporting up through the vice president of ESG. So that's just one example. And then hand it back over to Harsh.
Thanks, Adam. And as we are talking about the governance, it is very important to understand that in sustainability, regularly reviewing what the efforts are being put in, regularly reviewing what are the areas that need focus or realignment is very important. And if it is done by a senior management, definitely it adds a lot of value, since they have an bird view of all the different operations that is going on, and they can easily relate to the financial materiality of the organization. And in the automotive sector, what we observed was majority of the disclosure had an ESG committee, which was at a senior governance level. And not everyone had a board oversight, but majority of the companies also had an board level oversight towards the different activities which go, and on an annual basis or 6-monthly basis, they reach out to the board for their oversight, their review and confirmation of the different targets that they have taken, the progress that they have undertaken, where many of the companies are also looking at SBTi as the climate change goals, to make sure that the areas that they're looking on, the areas that they want to achieve, is being also overseen by the senior management, and they have that authority to drive the entire sustainability across their value chain. So, what we observed was a very high percentage of companies are looking at governance from senior management point of view. A quarter of the companies who have not, disclosed the information, or they don't have that information towards committee, I would say that what we observed was not everyone were reporting through their web pages. And currently, the statistics that we are looking at is for the companies, the 88% companies who are reporting on ESG. Out of those, the statistics are that 77% is having a community and board oversight, 75%. But yes, since all these different companies who are reporting on sustainability or ESG, definitely if they have an senior management committee, that would really add value to drive the entire sustainability across the organization. Over to you, Adam.
you're on mute.
Thank you. That was very helpful. So what I said was just not helpful. This is from a previous webinar that we've done, ESG in the automotive industry, on what the framework standards and rating agencies said. So we've pulled these topics from sort of an external, and then what we always would say is you need to know where your company is, what's right for you, what's material to your business. So what are your top 3 environmental topics? SGS is a giant global company with people, boots on the ground around the world. We fly and drive and travel to a lot of inspections and audits and verifications. So we really look at climate emissions from travel. That's one of our highest. And water and waste, we do have a lot of buildings. We have a lot of laboratories, so that usually where energy, water, and waste comes in, they might all be sort of equivalent on the utilities side, but I would probably put waste and energy management because we handle a lot of samples. But up to you what your 3 top are, but it is important to know that not every topic can be a priority. And even if it is a priority, it can't be the number 1. It might be the number 4. And you have to be able to prioritize where you put your resources. So I'll give everyone a few more seconds to submit, and then we'll see what the answers are. And this is really nice, very balanced throughout. We've got a lot of energy management, but material sourcing, climate emissions, water, waste, biodiversity. In the automotive industry, it makes sense because you're really not out there actively and directly impacting land use. Obviously, everyone impacts land use indirectly, but it's very normal for what we'd expect out of the automotive field. And then almost as important is if you choose topics that are material, have you set environmental targets in those areas? And one, choosing a topic is great, but if you're not going to hold yourself to some accountability and say, are we happy with where we are? Are we ahead of where we want to be? Are we behind? And how soon do we want to have a specific level of performance? SGS has all of our KPIs and targets in our integrated report. We certainly have room to grow. For instance, like in our CDP, we have climate emissions reductions targets that are very public. And those are right now only on scope 1 and scope 2. And one of the things we're developing in CDP to improve our score is to have scope 3 emission reduction targets. So if you have that, that's just one example. But do you have any environmental targets? And if you don't know, that's absolutely fine as well. I'll give everyone a few moments. Harsh, can you think of any other targets that we have? On the environmental side, I know greenhouse gas, but I know electricity is a huge subcomponent of our climate. So I'm guessing we have an electricity reduction target. I know we have a lot on the social side.
Yeah. Also something that we have common with the sector is renewable energy and efforts on that, which definitely take a lot of resources, but that is also something growing aspect towards the carbon offset and carbon neutrality.
Well, here is the answers for thank you for your responses. Some more on the I don't know, which is good. You'd have to be very familiar with the report of your company, and the company would have to announce it even internally. So fantastic to see, again, a little bit of diversity here. And then talk about how do you get to setting targets and topics if you want. There's a lot of guidance, so there's platforms you can look at, a lot of above the orange line, SASB, TCFD, GRI, CDP. We mentioned all these acronyms, also the EcoVadis platform. These are popular tools that people use that help you identify topics. They've identified topics that are material to the industry through multi-stakeholder engagement processes. And then targets, you can actually find targets that are set by other organizations that you can simply adopt. The supplier assurance, along with their survey and scoring tool. There's the different UN development goals along the bottom. Science-based targets are something you can adopt with a methodology for climate initiatives. RE100 is the renewable energy commitment to 100% renewable and clean energy, and then zero waste targets, obviously. They're typically a 90 to 99% reduction in waste, which is depends on which methodology you use. But those are some examples that we saw being used in the industry. And back over to Harsh.
Yes, thank you, Adam. And I would like to resonate that the companies who have started reporting on or have already been reporting since long time on ESG or sustainability, all of the companies are looking at environmental reporting KPIs and targets very closely, and they have selected very specific topics to disclose the information and drive those initiatives. And some of the most common topics that we observed which companies were reporting on was emissions, energy, and waste management, which also we saw the same polling on the group, that most of the efforts where companies look or focus upon, it's towards the emission or energy management and the waste management from a circular life cycle point of view. And all the different trends that we are looking at, where companies are looking on the different areas where emissions and energy is center of all the different activities that they look at. But at the same time, waste management and material sourcing is also linked with the value chain, where they bring in a lot of the stability with their upstreams and downstream of value chain, and they try to create a circular economy with waste management. On the water management, there were a lot of companies who are taking efforts and trying to communicate their story from the resources that they have installed or the different areas that they're looking at, for make sure that the fresh water consumption goes down. And biodiversity is something that a quarter of the companies are looking at biodiversity from the point of view of how they're reducing the impact while they are doing the operations. And when we talk about this KPIs, the communication is from through different reports as well as the website. But the same story is not communicated when it comes to the targets. And the targets is something that the emissions and energy, still they have very structured targets using platforms like SBTI, where they have taken commitments towards short, medium, and long term. Whereas in waste management or material sourcing, they have a lot of efforts undertaken, but not everywhere. All the companies have taken specific targets, or they have not maybe disclosed the targets in the public domain. So it could be either or. But when we talk about the communication towards initiatives and efforts to stakeholders, definitely the percentage is very high. But at the same time, the communication of the targets to achieve a specific goal or to reduce the impact or to show that progress, we saw that some of the material KPIs is lacking that kind of a target communication. So we have a great way towards when we have a disclosure towards specific material topics. Definitely it helps if the company have those targets aligned with their communication towards KPIs. So from the overall environmental point of view, definitely companies have reached that level where they are feeling comfortable to share their progress through their initiatives, but not through their targets.
And we try to look for insights from visuals. And this graphic, the only thing that really stands out is that waste management has a very big drop off in who sets targets. And we can't tell for sure, but a couple easy explanations could be that, a lot of folks have a zero waste target, but they might not know if they're not going to set a zero waste, which seems aggressive. They're not sure what to set as a target, as well as the waste industry itself has been going through some major upheavals with China and East Asia not taking our recyclables anymore, lack of trust from exposés and documentaries about the efficacy of recycling. And so I think there's some easy explanations that you could consider about why waste is maybe not as high, even though it's reported, there's not as many setting targets publicly. Next, do the same work, but with social topics. So these are, again, coming from the framework standards and rating agencies as material to the automotive industry. And so if you think for your company, what are the top three? Which stand out the most that you're going to put the most attention on, and why? And again, for us, we don't have a lot of supply chain. We've got individuals with laptops and devices flying around the world. So we have one doubled up, diversity and equal opportunity. So sorry about that. But data privacy is huge for us, SGS, for an example, because we manage clients' data. Occupational health and safety of the individuals that are traveling around the world, and probably training and education, because we are global. We have one of the most diverse staff, I think, in the world. And so for us, it's easy to kind of see how that pans out. But if you're a parts manufacturer, if you're a vehicle motor vehicle manufacturer might be slightly different, but for you yourself, what would it be? And I'll give everyone a few more moments to put in their answers. But the tricky thing I would say is that we always tell clients, environmental measurement is always easier because it's easier to measure physical assets, widgets, and things, and it's harder to measure people. It's also tricky. Some things you don't want to measure people until it's sort of dehumanizing their role, but it's much easier to measure environmental topics than it is to measure social topics, just in general, as a rule of thumb. So thank you. I'll see what we have here. Nice spread. Data privacy is pretty low, which I would say the only thing that might change in the near future is the more onboard interconnected cars and vehicles that might start to change if we're sharing a lot more data, or AI is driving our cars in the future, or whatever it happens to be. Obviously, data is going to be a growing issue, but the reality is all these other topics really balance out for the automotive industry as well. And then same thing, have you set social targets? Kind of pushing to what I just mentioned, we have. Specifically, I know we have gender representation and females in leadership as a target, and I'm trying to think of, we have a huge health and safety initiative, but I can't tell you exactly offhand what the targets are, but we do have social targets, and we get safety presentations almost definitely monthly. I don't know if it's weekly, but that for us is a huge push. But for you, in your roles, it's important to know, and it's going to be expected more and more over time, that if you say something is material to the business, then it's very likely a great candidate for having a performance target that's measurable and folks can track it. Any stakeholders interested in the company want to know how you're doing. Give you a few more seconds. And thank you and great job to the 50%. That's fantastic. You're also not in bad company. Like I said, 25% that say no. It's not the easiest to set social targets. And if you don't know, good to ask inside the company, look at your reporting, look at your website, ask your boss. But it's becoming more and more of an expectation. The same thing, if you go looking for social topics and targets, for examples, check the same standards that we mentioned in the platforms above the line, but there are different UN SDGs that are on the social side. They give very specific targets, brands that matter, UN Global Compact, Diversity Inc. lists, and the certified ISO 45001 companies. Obviously, that's a huge and long-running workforce health and safety standard, management standard. But just some places and considerations that these are what we find when we go looking in the automotive industry for topics and targets. Harsh?
Thanks, Adam. And, as rightly Adam said, that whenever it comes to measurement, managing, and reporting, environmental KPIs are much easier to monitor and report on as compared to the social KPIs. But I was very happy to see that the total number of companies who are taking social KPIs and trying to communicate that initiative, the progress that they have done, and trying to manage that reporting trend, still same as all the companies who are reporting on environmental KPIs are also taking social KPIs, giving equal importance and reporting with the same rigor. And they are also selecting very specific KPIs to the automotive sector, which is what we observed, that the most common topics that were reported were occupational health and safety and product quality and safety, which is very important from the automotive sector perspective because of the high manufacturing efforts that goes in, as well as the product safety and quality, which matters a lot from the end use of the product, which is going to be all the different customers who are going to drive the automotive or going to use the different quality parts or the OEMs. And that is where we saw that this were the two main areas that majority of the companies looked at. But also if we talk and look at the different trends, that like diversity and equal opportunity, training and education, human rights, those were the areas also that companies have taken initiatives to, have all those inclusions in their operations, focus on a lot of trainings and very specific skill development, which are very much related to the operations, and have human right efforts taken into consideration while drafting the policies and standards. From the data privacy point of view, yes, what we observed in the poll as well resonates the same, that companies currently are not looking data privacy or cybersecurity in so much rigor as compared to occupational health and safety. But yes, as we are seeing the trends and the waves are changing in the AI field, definitely there will come a time that this graph might completely turn over, and we have very high data privacy statistics. And we have seen many of the companies who have already adopted or leaning towards more AI technology. Those were the companies who have started reporting on cybersecurity and data privacy from the customer data point of view, as well as how they are looking at the different areas into conserving that information. When we talk about the targets for the different areas that they have reported on, we saw that occupational health and safety and diversity and equal opportunity had the highest amount of targets, which was still half of the companies from the reporting companies who are taking into consideration. But yes, all the different areas that were looked at were all the KPIs, and the target trend is much more consistent with the reporting, where companies are trying to report on the different social aspects, and they are trying to report on the different targets that they have taken into consideration for their KPIs. Whereas still there is a big gap in the reporting as well as targets. And again, as Adam said, that this specific section or the dimension of social parameters is very much difficult to report, and it's even more difficult to have a target tied around it and communicate and work towards that particular aspect. But yes, there are tools, frameworks, and experts who can definitely help to drive that specific KPI and target, and have that into short, medium, and long-term derived KPIs to make sure that you have a specific target in place to work around and to have the progress wrapped around it.
Thank you. The next question is, has your organization sought third-party assurance for ESG and sustainability data? We'll talk about that soon. If you don't know, that's a valid answer. But having an independent third party verify, sometimes certify, verify, or assure, assurance is the general term being used in regulatory schemes of your data, and it doesn't have to be 100% of it, but are you getting assurance on some or all of your data? Yes, SGS does. And it's funny in the industry because we are an assurance provider and we work with our competitors because for independent verification, you can't assure your own work. So we work with a very lovely competitor and vice versa. So we have yes for us, but you might use us or someone else, depending on how you got here today. But have you verified any of your data, social, environmental, governance, any of those, all or above count? And if you don't know, that's valid too. I'll give you a few more seconds. Seems like people are answering pretty quickly. And usually you know this because in your report itself, you'll see a little check mark, or people only undertake this so that they can get the credit for it because you have stakeholders asking. So a lot of no's here in this one, which is also not that unheard of. We also strongly suggest it, but it is driven often by either regulation, which is coming up, or stakeholders' requests. So just definitely keep an eye out there. And if you don't know, we're about to tell you a little bit of background. This is the example of a public assurance statement, or what they're called in the industry is a statement of opinion. You might see a statement of opinion specifically, which is very common for greenhouse gas, like a greenhouse gas verification opinion, or you might have an entire sustainability report statement of opinion. And essentially there's multiple sections, but they define which data and standards are being verified against, because it's never subjective. It's always, there's a standard and we're comparing you against the standard to clarify the scope of what's in scope for that engagement, and then what's the resulting opinion. There's either, it mirrors CPA firms with your financials, but there's a limited level of assurance or reasonable, which we'll talk about next, but you get that opinion at the end. So if you look at third-party assurance in the life cycle or the client journey as you're going through a program, you usually start with training often a materiality assessment to identify what your material topics are, various kinds of consulting in the space, and then there's often what's called pre-assurance. That is an affordable, usually fully remote option that does not close any findings, but it does check your systems, your data collection, your controls that are in place, your KPI definitions, things like that before you go into a full report assurance or a full KPI assurance. And then there's limited or reasonable being the most rigorous and the highest level of sampling. So what that looks like here, very tangible benefits is even if you're in a limited level of assurance, what's called moderate level of sampling, you get a negative opinion, which means, again, it's kind of teasing out hairs, but you'll hear us write in the opinion, we did not find any evidence to suggest that these claims are not true. So it's always sent around whatever the claim is. And then it could either be for the full report or just some KPIs. The full report is the context of the report. Did you follow SASB, GRI, TCFD, also again, the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board? They have industry-specific standards, Global Reporting Initiative, or the Task Force for Climate-Related Financial Disclosures. Those are the most common. But did you follow the context of that report where it requires you to identify topics, define KPIs a certain way, and then the accuracy comes later, the KPI itself, is it accurate? And then there's a whole nother level of reasonable, which is a higher level of sampling, and then it becomes a positive opinion. SGS, for example, we did find evidence to suggest this claim is true. And it's a difference. Definitely investors care and banks care. The higher sampling level can be subjective in some cases. In greenhouse gas, it is not. You can say that specifically a moderate level of sampling is any category that is 10% or higher of total emissions needs to be sampled. You need to sample down to source evidence and see invoices or bills of lading or whatever that happens to be. And then it's a 5% sampling rate. For reasonable level of assurance where any specific GHG emissions category that is 5% or higher of total emissions gets to be sampled as well. So the reason people do that, which is often overlooked, the second one, external confidence for customers and stakeholders, that's the one we see the most. Obviously, it improves ratings and scores with sustainability and ESG rating agencies. You meet and exceed regulatory requirements with that, but I think often underlooked, and we can't put enough stress on it. If you do not have third-party assurance, you don't have the internal confidence in your own system and your own measurement that you're making choices and investments and strategies are built upon that data, that it's essential. Even if you do a pre-assurance, we highly recommend getting confidence in your system so that you can go forward aggressively or as aggressively as you need to, and you don't second guess your own program and your own data. Back to Harsh.
Thank you, Adam. And as we saw in the poll as well, that not many companies are looking at third-party assurance as one of the key activity of their entire sustainability reporting process. But there is the similar statistics that we also observed in the industry, that majority of the companies currently have not gone towards a third-party assurance at the end of their entire process, and there could be multiple reasons, as Adam suggested. They lack the confidence in their process systems, or they have internal board or meeting which committee reviews the information on an annual basis, or they have currently in the process of getting their report assured maybe in the coming years, where they are trying to get that comprehensive check internally and then go to the external third party provider. But yes, what we observed in the overall statistics is also the companies who are taking assurance, that is 31%, are also looking at limited assurance currently as a choice of level of assurance, and on an average 11% of the companies are also looking at their full assurance report, these are the companies who have been reporting over the years and have built that confidence that they can go through their entire report and have their report assured for their investors, for their stakeholders, for regulators, to make sure that what they are reporting on, what their targets are, also aligned, and a third party can come and verify those entire report as well. The average KPI that we observed which were undergone assurance were 4, And since there were four, I can easily name them as well. That was Scope 1, Scope 2, Scope 3, and as well as waste management. And these were the areas where companies are, we saw that in the environmental section, that these are the KPIs which companies are reporting a lot, having their targets around, and they are also putting it towards the assurance, which resonates with the entire efforts and the journey. And more companies are now, where they are trying to get mature in their processes, they are leaning towards reasonable assurance as well, which is more rigorous, and they want to get their systems checked in by a third party independent service provider, so that they don't have that bias created. Because majority of the companies who are not reporting or have not conducting their third party assurance are also relying on their internal audit committee or internal senior management committee or board of directors to have their internal checks done before it goes in the public domain. But yes, the companies who are looking at third party assurance are trying to avoid that bias and have a third party come on board and go through their entire systems process and check to get that certificate attached in the report, which holds a lot of value for the different stakeholder groups. And that is what something that we would be seeing in coming days as the regulations come in the coming year. For Canadian regulations would be something that we'll be looking at from next year to next 3 years, that will be coming up. And for US, we'll be also looking at from the state point of view. There are many states who have already started doing it, and SEC regulations will be soon. We'll be looking at the assurance part as well. So it would be sooner than later that companies would be also looking at verifying their processes, their systems, SOPs, and the data which is finally coming out to their stakeholders is been verified by some of the third party assurance processes.
Thank you, Harsh. And now next steps, given the data, just as a quick summary, if you want to be a leader, if you want to look at what are the leadership practices in the automotive industry around ESG and sustainability reporting, one is just establishing a senior governance committee, and that group is prioritizing and managing material ESG topics, ideally with board oversight, measuring and disclosing performance per material topic in an annual report. We did see that some folks were on like a 2-year window. It still happens, but I would say that most stakeholders or most drivers are actually requiring an annual report, and customers included. Regulatory schemes, if you're on a biannual, we highly recommend getting on an annual, because a lot can happen. Imagine if 2019 or 2020 COVID hit and then you didn't report anything for 2 years, you've got a lot of missing data and things would change dramatically. The international reporting frameworks and standards used most commonly are to consider, again, you don't have to do all of them, but often it's combined SASB, CDP, the UN SDGs, TCFD, GRI, and CSRD. CSRD is specific to doing business in Europe. And then if you want to consider environmental topics, so KPIs and targets, the most common topics were greenhouse gas emissions, energy management, waste management, and material sourcing. And then consider for social topics, if you have KPIs and targets in occupational health and safety, product quality and safety, diversity and equal opportunity, training and education. And then wasn't nearly as common, but consider if you're going to get limited assurance for a minimum number of whatever the critical KPIs you identified from those two lists right before that, number 4 and number 5. And that would put you in a leadership position when it comes to automotive ESG reporting. Just as an example, you can find this. This is a list of all the services we have along your entire client journey, from training all the way to assurance. Both we specialize in greenhouse gas and sustainability reporting. And then here's a list of, you can check these out later, but lots of courses specifically to drill down into specializations in greenhouse gas and climate, but also broad-based ESG and sustainability as well. And then we have something very popular is our CDP climate workshop for boost your CDP climate score. That's the next one, comes up June 3rd. It's really a 4-hour technical workshop on how to improve your score in CDP under climate the fastest that you can, and build basically a 5-year roadmap of how you're going to improve over time. We have an amazing YouTube channel that just keeps growing. All of our technical content is out there, over 100 videos, over 100 hours of content, and it's growing all the time. So it's a great place to keep up and with what we're doing. This will drop in a couple weeks, the recording there, but you can go find so much information for free on our website or on our channel, which is SGS North America. Can't promote that enough. And then as a thank you, I just say, let us know in the Q&A. We have plenty of time for questions. If you have any questions, or just reach out to us afterwards. We've got another question here. Is what are the top Canadian companies currently known to be fully qualified as sustainable organizations? By example, any examples? I just want to say it's a great question. That who we are is an objective third-party verifier. So sustainable organizations is, unless there's a standard that said certified sustainable organization, I can't tell you. It's a great question. But typically people will ask for, what are you certified by? And I don't know, I'll say there's B Corporation. That's a growing trend. I can't tell you that, they're 100% sustainable, but there's a methodology and a score that you can look at and compare peer to peer. Those are the things I would point you towards, something with verifiable methodology. EcoVadis has badges for industry specific, top 1%, top 5% in your industry. There's platinum, gold, silver, bronze. It's a fantastic question. I would just say that a little subjective for our qualifications to say today. Another question, which of the recent climate disclosure regulations impact automotive specifically? It's less about the regulation. It's more about your size and whether you're publicly traded. So all of the climate disclosure regulations coming out in Canada and the US are either about, are you publicly traded? And then it comes down to size. Like California has specific ones. There's a 500 million cutoff revenue and a $1 billion cutoff revenue. And that determines not only when you have to start, but how much reporting you have to do. So whether you're publicly traded, you're almost definitely going to have to report soon. And then assurance comes, it gets stair-stepped in. The size of revenue per year, also who you're banking with. As an example, both the US, first it was Canada and then the US, but the largest banks in Canada, it's the federally regulated financial institutions. So it's also the insurance companies. So if you're with some of the federally regulated large institutions, you're going to have to start reporting scope 1 and 2 to the bank because they have to start reporting scope 3. So that's a different ripple effect that's happening through the financial sector. And there's another one that I feel like I'm missing, but that might be it. Help me out, Harsh. Is there another slice that I'm missing? Size, revenue, publicly traded, size of revenue, and are you banking with a certain institution?
Yes, that covers it.
Okay. Another, what platforms and surveys are most common for automotive companies? SAQ is pretty popular. We don't have a lot of insight into that because it's not as publicly available, but the supplier assurance questionnaire, but EcoVadis, I think, is coming in a close second. CDP is those are for, I should say, broad.
Yeah.
It's a qualifier. Those are ESG or sustainability disclosure platforms that are very broad. CDP is also very popular, but it's not an ESG disclosure tool. It's a specific one topic under the environmental section. It's climate disclosure. It's very, very popular, but it's only on climate disclosure. So I would say SAQ, EcoVadis, and CDP. Those come to mind, but please let us know if you have others. Any other questions? Any other thoughts, Harsh, from you, Kim, before we wrap up?
Yeah, I would just say that the questions were really great, and what we see is there's no right or wrong or a perfect sustainable company. According to me, on my personal thoughts, companies who in the time of disaster as well continue to grow, show their progress in in reducing environmental impact, show their social license to operate with their different responsibility to different stakeholder groups, as well as have their governance practices intact in the time of crisis. I would say that's a sustainable company. Definitely, when we say that the most sustainable company or most qualified company, definitely is very subjective, and through different frameworks, different standards, it can be defined differently. But yes, it's an organization's own standards and matrices on which they can define that, yes, since we are growing with reducing our environmental impact, having consistent social license to operate, and having a good governance mechanism, definitely qualifies as a good sustainable company. And there are many companies who are on that good going progress, and definitely in coming times those companies emerge in the time of disaster to be the top ones. And when it comes to standards and regulations, we are seeing a big wave across the world, where many of the companies were reliant on government, that it can be undertaken once it's a part of regulation, and that's where government has taken the hint and brought a lot of regulations across the sustainable disclosures. But yes, on the positive side, I would say that through all this regulation, what comes is definitely a lot of efforts in this area, which ultimately helps organizations to grow and identify those high risk areas, and at the same time identify those opportunities which can definitely grow their business much more better and have those optimal efficiencies defined.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Harsh. So that covers the agenda. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to echo what Harsh said. We don't need it.
Yeah. Okay, well, that covers the agenda for today. Please don't hesitate to reach out directly if we can be of any help. Thank you to both Adam and Harsh for all of this wonderful information, and thank you all for your time. We hope you have a great day.